I wanted the alien to have certain kind of fascination and delicacy, like this massive toy coming towards her, which was mesmerizing. And I put this music up for her, which seemed to help her. So, in fact, when I got into the Nostromo and into the shuttle, also at the end, I lined the side of the set with 15-inch speakers, and I played Tomita in the shuttle, absolutely full bore. So rather than a silent set and me shouting action and Sigourney rushing around in silence, I said, "Do you want some assistance?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, listen to this." And I had The Planets by Tomita, and she liked that because then it helped her. It just helped her to have that massive orchestration around it, and we had it right up. Yeah. And of course, making Sigourney a very lonely figure, she can hear the death rather than see the death of the other two. Her death is heard, and it's probably more frightening by hearing it rather than seeing it. That was a tough session in the looping stage, trying to get that kind of scream.
Arthur?
I think what we've managed to do in the film here is always put the audience in the place of the individual about to die. So I think we've somehow touched on something which makes the audience very vulnerable to what's occurring, which I think is why it's particularly frightening. So the invention of how do you blow up a refinery is, tricky and should be complex. But also it's enormously frustrating. It's almost this meant to be kind of almost humorous, because here you are trying to read an instruction book, the time when you're about to meet your maker, and there's one of the fuses that I've got in the office, which Nikki gave to me at the end of the movie. I've got this column. Nothing can be done by mistake here. This is going to be very deliberate. So in a way, it's like a one-sided, one-man way of being able to set off an atomic bomb.
The emergency destruct system is now activated. The ship will detonate in T-minus 10 minutes. The option to override automatic detonation expires in T-minus 5 minutes.
Now she hits the corridor, so this is very tough working in this CO2, because whilst it's kind of harmless, when you work in it, it sucks the oxygen out of the air, so you get really out of breath. It makes you gasp. Yeah, always loved this shot. She was never able to come from below because I had no double-decker set, but what I did was build enough of... That's why I had those high curbs, so she could crouch, put her hands on, and pull herself up. We couldn't even afford a hole in the floor. So hence the design of the ladder and the base of the ladder. And I got kind of bored with the lighting after a while. Whilst I think it looks great, we needed to start to escalate. And I think on this film particularly, I started to say, how do we assist ourselves by assisting Sigourney, who's doing a fantastic job, but if the ship is going wrong, therefore the electrical systems are beginning to kick into all sorts of emergency reactions. So we got some strobe lights, which I had attached to the front of the dolly, and I could actually adjust the knobs on the strobes to get the amount of delay. And so that's why the whole thing was alive with flickering light and God knows what else, which at the time looked pretty new. Now I think I've seen in, many other films. Curiosity of the alien for this creature, which is the cat, which ironically it leaves alone. But again, it's another clue. Could it have done something later when you get into the shuttle? Now she's got to come back and switch off the power. But she's past the point of no return. There's one of our big miniatures, the engine room.
22, 21, 20 seconds, 19, 18, 17.
When you get this played full bore, it's pretty intense actually. And interesting to see that I think it's the last 17 minutes of the film there is no dialogue except for utterances of Sigourney to herself. Now you've got the emergency thing really kicking in.
Has now expired.
Mother! I've turned the cooling unit back on! Mother!
The ship will automatically destruct in T-5.
You get this going 6-track Dolby, big sound. It's a great mix. Now she's got to go all the way back. And they always wanted to cut this down. And I said, no, you've got to show... that flapping door there was actually a guy standing there trying to hide the light. And they wanted to cut it out. I said, nah, leave it in. But there's actually a guy there. So, interesting here that you have Sigourney about to lash out at technology that is going to destroy her. It's nice to play on mother and calling her you bitch as well. And these running backwards down the corridor with the Panaflex is murder. It was just run, 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 and the thing is bouncing all over the place. But I didn't want to use Steadicam because it's too smooth. I think I should talk about Terry Rawlins, who is was my editor actually on 5 movies. He was my music editor on Duelists. And so I invited Terry to then come and become an editor and edit Alien, which I think he did a really formidable job on. And Terry's knowledge of music was great. In fact, he probably taught me all I know now about film music, or made me very conscious of score and the value of film music. Now, how do we keep this going until we get her inside that shuttle where we think the film is over? Interesting here, because it's sustaining. Everything is here sustained by, of course, Sigourney, and the sounds of the ship about to blow. So that's all Jimmy Shields. It's really good. In fact, this is where we're all heading towards the end of the movie. And I felt that the film could not end here. But there was a big battle about, this is it. The film's over, right? I felt the rhythm is wrong, because after all, rhythms are music. The music of the story, if you like, is not right. You can't end the film here. It's not that simple. Because for her to shoot and sit in the seat, take off, just didn't make sense. So there was a big play of what to do. I knew what to do. And said the alien has to be in this craft, so it's like the fourth act. They felt it was overkill, and I said, really, you need overkill. In a film like this, you need overkill. And in fact, I think in recent years, films have come up with endings on endings on endings, right? And this is where I first got the idea that really we should have an ending on an ending. And she's away. And that's the old shaking the camera all over the place. It's the only way we can do it. And what follows is just artwork, just painting on a series of stills and intermixed between, literally in a laboratory, we just mix between one shot and another. That's all painting. Using the strobes on her, which worked very well. I wanted to go for I think 3 bangs, because that was a big vehicle. In fact, it's kind of silly, because with an explosion like that, there'd be nothing left. But why it explodes 3 times, it's just better. Why 3 is always better. There you go, I knew there was 3. And a firestorm. Bit dodgy, but kind of good, considering it's just artwork. That was, I think, actually that was a little bit of slit scan. Great cue. Here's the cue. Now you know you're in trouble.
I got you.
Got you, you son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch.
Now you know you're in trouble. I think the music now, as dialogue, is telling you it's not over. Hit it a little bit. There. So now we're tense again. I love that cut to the cat, this little squeal of the cat. And you think, you're convinced it has to be the cat, I think, right? Because don't forget, we've invested in earlier shots of the cat wandering off by itself, and then the alien looking down in the box. In fact, now looking at this, I would have almost put the box with the cat in it before her going into the cockpit. So then you think, A, the alien's in the cockpit, B, what did it do to the cat?
All right. It's nice to see you too.
Is that satisfaction or is it threat? I wanted these hypersleeps to be eventually, for the end of the film, I wanted her to be Sleeping Beauty. Now, when you lose the music, funnily enough, it gets more tense. And the natural sound effects gets, I think, even more scary. So you wonder what the hell's going on. They kept saying, there's no sex in this movie. I said, well, you don't need any, but there's a good opportunity here to have a little bit of, hinted at sexuality, and Sigourney is certainly the person to project that. And like in these films, what's interesting, and now I think about it, but then nobody else does. She's just lost 6 colleagues. And she's going into mode of, how do I get out of here, right? How do I put myself into a position where I'm going to reach Earth and maybe the network will pick me up? And nobody ever raised that question. I do, but I thought, well, if it's not broke, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Otherwise, you're going to have a serious psychological blitz as she, collapses mentally because she's lost 6 colleagues. Oddly enough, there's a sensuality to this whole scene. Partly the silence. It's subtly sexual, right? Or is it just me? This is a tough shoot inside a teeny cupboard. And it's even tougher. How the hell do you get the helmet to go on one and Nikki just did it. We just put the helmet on, and as it hit, the lights went on inside the helmet, and you just make a sound of an airlock, and you got the helmet on. Economy. There it is. Watch. Simple. Beautiful helmets. Now, we used the same suits as the planet, and all we did was recycle and spray them white. Trying to think of something other than a laser gun or a weapon. I thought a harpoon. So they're saying, a harpoon? What would she use a harpoon for? I said, docking. And like a safety thing in case something... It's like a safety piece of safety equipment. And I thought because a harpoon is more lethal somehow and more... a gun is too easy. No, this is Sigourney's idea of saying, I want to sing You Are My Lucky Star, right, to keep myself concentrating and not thinking about the worst that could possibly happen. So we did it on the day, and then there was this big rush to get the clearance on it. I love the lighting in here because it's very harsh in a way, but beautiful. And shooting this with the strobes going, you're getting a obviously stroboscopic effect on the alien, so he's kind of jumping. Because I think in the strobe you're losing some frames. It's an illusion, but I think it helped. I love that as you see him slither out from the wall. Whilst it's humanoid, it's spooky. They say you don't see enough of the alien. I think you see plenty of the alien. And besides, he is humanoid. Because if the alien had originally jumped on the cat, then the alien would have been a version of the cat, and so on. All these things would have been done now CGI, but they're tough to do physically, It's all physical. So Roy Scammell was the stuntman who fell on an elastic and then got pulled back up. There's the water effect of the engines going on, which I thought was particularly successful, particularly there. That's like, they say, what is that? And I says, well, it's a plasma engine, of course. Then you cut him loose and let him drop, and he just clipped me, nearly knocked me out when they dropped him. And this shot, oddly enough, was spherical. We had to do it for a technical reason, but I left it spherical so you have the distortion on the body of the lens. There, particularly, that's beautiful.
Final report of the commercial starship Nostromo. Third officer reporting. The other members of the crew, Kane, Lambert, Parker, Brett, Ash, and Captain Dallas are dead. Cargo and ship destroyed. I should reach the frontier in about 6 weeks. With a little luck, the network will pick me up. This is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo. Signing off.
I love these repetitions. And this is Howard Hanson music.
Come on, kid.
And one of the reasons it really works beautifully, apart from going with the voice, goes into a hold in a second. Beautiful. Here. I love that holding pattern. Interesting, after a film like that, you end on virtual silence. The production designer on this was Michael Seymour, who was an old colleague of mine from television commercials, and who had invited two young art directors at that particular point to assist him. Roger Christian assisted him with the look of and the construction of the spaceship Nostromo, and Roger Christian's now a director and has been for a number of years. And Les Dilly was in charge of everything to do with the alien, and therefore he would carry out to Giger's drawings, remarkable drawings, and translate those drawings into these giant sets, which in itself is a task. There's a big leap between a drawing and a set where it looks real and looks, I should say, viscerally real, rather than just like a rendition of a drawing. It can easily fall apart between the art and the final construction. Yeah, I mean, it was. I think I've been pretty well used to a lot of filmmaking at this point through advertising and then a film like The Duelists. So I knew the best. I knew I needed the best because I'm very demanding, and at the same time, I think I'm easy to work with, and the whole thing, you know, when you put a good bunch of people together, it becomes all very inspirational. And I think, above all things, if it's not fun, you shouldn't be doing it, you know. So I love the process of filmmaking, and thank God I'm able to continue making movies.